When he was a child, they told him to stop daydreaming and pay attention to reality. He heard these words so many times that he finally believed them. The images coming alive in his mind were not a skill to be developed, but a problem to be corrected. And so, he did what most children do. He pushed the images aside, kept them quiet, and directed his attention to what the world around him considered real. As the years passed, this felt like maturity. It felt as though he had finally grown out of something childish and unproductive, as if he was now in the real world, with real tools, doing work that truly mattered. Then one day, standing before a problem that logic had not solved and experience had not broken through, he did something almost by accident. He stopped pushing and allowed his mind to go where it wanted to go. The answer came from somewhere he had not been searching. Not from memory, not from analysis, not from anything he had learned or been taught. From a place that opened when he stopped insisting on usefulness and allowed the mind to move freely. That moment did not simply solve the problem. It changed his understanding of himself and ultimately changed everything. Most of us have learned not to believe in imagination. We associate it with childhood, with fantasy, with pleasant but unproductive mental activity that has not yet become reality. We have been told that serious work only happens in the serious world, with data, with experience, with effort that can be measured and verified. Imagination, within this framework, appears to be what we do when we are escaping from real work. But this framework is wrong, and most people pay the price of believing it without ever knowing they are paying it. Because imagination is not the opposite of strategy. It is its beginning. Every solution that has ever existed was imagined before it was built. Every business, every repaired relationship, every person whose life changed, it began as an image in someone's mind. The image of something that did not yet exist, held clearly enough that the person holding it began to move toward it. This is not daydreaming. It is the most practical thing a person can do. And most people have been convinced to let it go without ever growing up enough to understand what they gave up. Think of the last real problem you faced. Not a small worry, a genuine obstacle, something stuck, something that logic could not solve, something that experience offered no way through. When did the answer come, and from where? If you are honest, probably not from thinking harder in the same direction. It came in a moment of emptiness, during a walk, in the shower, at the edge of sleep. It arose from a state in which the mind was allowed to make connections it could not make under pressure. This state is not laziness. This is where real thinking happens, and most people only arrive there by accident, never understanding that they can go there on purpose. The mind has two separate ways of working. A focused, analytic mode, useful for executing known plans, solving established problems, following defined paths. And an expanding, associative mode, useful for finding entirely new paths. Most people spend almost all of their mental energy in the first mode. They are then surprised to find themselves continuing to arrive at the same solutions to the same problems. The second mode requires permission. It requires setting aside the mind's pressure toward productivity and allowing it to do something that appears to offer no immediate benefit. It requires imagining, not vaguely and as an escape, but deliberately, in a focused way, with the intention of seeing something that ordinary analysis cannot reach. There is a version of imagination that has become entirely escape, disconnected from genuine desire, used only for comfort, attached to no action. But that is not the version we are speaking of here. We are speaking of imagination that is concrete and bound to intention. There is another version, one that is rooted in something real, directed toward a concrete problem or a concrete outcome, used as a tool for finding what logic alone cannot find. That version looks completely different from the inside. It has a direction. You are not simply imagining everything. You are imagining a specific outcome, clearly enough to feel yourself standing within it. In that clarity, something remarkable happens. The mind begins to work backward, from the imagined outcome to the present moment, finding paths that are invisible when looking forward. This is not mystical. Human cognition genuinely works this way, given the right conditions. When we clearly know what we are solving toward, we show extraordinary skill in solving problems. Imagination provides that clarity. It creates a destination vivid enough to give the mind direction. Without it, you move towards something better, but when you get close, there is not enough concreteness to recognize it when you arrive. The man who had suppressed his imagination for years discovered this the hard way. Years of practical, grounded, sensible effort had created a life that worked but never quite sang. Something was missing, not a resource, not an opportunity, not a better time. An image, a clear, concrete picture of what he was truly building toward, vivid enough that the mind could begin to organize itself around it. When he finally allowed himself to truly imagine, in detail, without apologizing for its scale, something changed. Not immediately in the world around him, but in the way he moved through it. He began to notice opportunities he had been walking past for years. Opportunities that had always been there, simply invisible because he had not been looking for them. Imagination gave his attention a new filter, and that filter changed what he could see. This is the practical mechanism behind what most people consider mysterious. When the right opportunities arrive, the right connections, arriving at the right place at the right time, what happens is usually simpler and more practical than it appears. Their minds had been given something concrete to search for, and a mind with something concrete to search for is extraordinarily good at finding it. We notice what we are calibrated to notice. We recognize what our mental filter has been trained to recognize. Change the filter, and you change what the world appears to offer you, not because the world changed, but because your attention changed. Imagination is one of the most powerful ways to change the filter. When you spend real time with a vivid, concrete picture of where you are going, you are not simply having a pleasant experience. You are recalibrating your attention. You are telling your mind what matters, determining what it should scan for, which of the things you see in an ordinary moment of an ordinary day it should flag as relevant. Most people never do this deliberately. The last moment they allowed their attention to be calibrated is limited to only what has been happening, the last mistake, the last thing someone said, the last piece of evidence confirming the small story of what is possible for them. Then they are surprised to find the world continuing to offer them more of the same. The decision to imagine deliberately, to sit with a clear image of something specific and allow it to become real in your mind before it is real anywhere else, breaks that default. A new signal is introduced into the system, and systems respond to signals. Not immediately, not always visibly, but consistently, over time, undeniably, in accumulating ways. The man eventually built what he had imagined. Not exactly as he had first envisioned it. Real outcomes rarely match the original image precisely, but in its direction, under its guidance. Shaped over the years by returning to the image to keep his attention pointed in the right direction. When people ask how he saw the opportunity that others missed, it is hard to give a convincing answer, because the honest answer is simply that he was looking for it, for a long time. Very specifically. He had imagined it clearly enough that his mind knew what it looked like. When it appeared, not dramatically, without a sign announcing its arrival, he recognized it, because he had already seen it, many times in a place where imagination lives. That recognition is what most people wait for, without knowing how to create it. They wait for something obvious, precise, something that announces itself as the opportunity they had been hoping for. But it does not come that way. It comes quietly, looks like an ordinary moment, and is visible only to the person whose attention is calibrated to see it. Calibration takes time. It requires the repeated practice of returning to a clear image of where you are going and allowing that image to work on your attention. It is not a single act of inspiration. It is a daily, quiet, invisible practice. Like every practice, it compounds. The longer you do it, the more precisely your attention calibrates. The more precisely your attention calibrates, the more the world appears to cooperate with where you want to go. The world was never cooperating. Your attention was always finding what it had learned to find. But from the inside, at a certain point, the difference begins to lose its significance. Because the results are real. The opportunities are real. The path forward, which once felt invisible, is now something you can genuinely see and walk along. This is why, if you have been apologizing for your imagination, treating it as unproductive or unreal, or keeping it as something to be hidden, it is worth thinking again about what you have given up. This is not the fantasy version, not the escape version. It is the deliberate, directed, purposeful version, knowing exactly what you are looking for, and returning to that image consistently until the mind finally accepts it as reality and begins to organize itself around it. This is not daydreaming. This is strategy. The deepest kind, the kind that works first through your attention, before everything else, and ends up changing everything downstream. The image comes first. Everything else follows.